making that funny noise, or is it okay?
Nope, your microphone sounds great.
Okay. I have a foot between it and the computer, and I plugged it in on the other side, so I think that might have been.
Yeah, I think it was probably interference before, so.
Okay.
But it sounds great now, so.
Good. So for anybody just joining, we've got something to keep you occupied for the first few minutes while we're waiting to get going. We've got a pre-post quiz, so it sort of gives you a preview of coming attractions, and it's also something we always use for our national presentations, and we encourage other people who are using these resources to use it as well. So this gives you a chance to see it and use it firsthand. So if you wouldn't mind going to the QR code, or we'll put the link in the chat, and you can, it just takes a few minutes to fill out.
Well, it looks like we've hit 4 o'clock, so I guess we'll start things off officially. Graduate students who are taking this for credit, please double check that you're signed in through your Minds account so that we can make sure that we grab credit for you. So today we have Dr. Wendy Adams, who is one of our fellow faculty members here at Colorado School of Mines. So we're excited to hear what she and her group have been up to. So Wendy has been kind of a staple in the physics education research community, and I know I've learned a lot about her, a lot about physics through her work. So she developed at Colorado Boulder a very well-known assessment for students' attitudes about learning science, which has fostered so many spin-offs and is very widely used. I know that she's done a lot of work on problem solving, which tends to be a very difficult thing to measure within students' understanding of physics. So that stuff has been really cool too. She's been involved with the FETs up at Boulder, which are also extremely widespread now that we are especially doing tons of remote instruction. And more recently, she's been leading a lot of the teaching stuff here at Mines. And I know that she's developed some instrument that gauges teachers' perceptions of teaching as a profession. So all sorts of work. I'm sure I only covered a minor portion of that. So I'm really happy to be able to introduce Wendy, who is going to be talking about some of her more recent work here.
All right. Well, thank you, Emily. Well, first I want to introduce Jared and Savannah. So we really enjoy being here at Mines and part of the Mines department, even though I've seen my office once since March. And Savannah and Jared are kind enough to try to keep the plants alive. So Jared and Savannah are both postdocs with the project, and Jared's been here a little over a year and Savannah a little over 2 years. And we also have Allie Costley, who is a research associate, and she's sort of our program coordinator. So she coordinates the grant work as well as Teach at Mines. And Jared and Savannah also help some with Teach at Mines. So I do a lot of grant work, but then also direct Teach at Mines. And we just got a minor approved through the Board of Trustees. So we will now be in the catalog. A student can do teaching as a minor, and theoretically, pretty soon they'll be able to do a bachelor's of engineering with a focus area in STEM teaching through the engineering and design department. So that's super amazing progress. We've been struggling through this for about 6 years. So that's our a highlight for the spring. But today we're going to really focus on our research on our project called Get the Facts Out. And so teaching the best kept secret is the facts piece. What we're trying to do is share accurate information about the profession so that students who have an interest in teaching, so not people who haven't thought about it, but students who do already have an interest, aren't walking away from the profession because of misinformation. And we see a lot of that. And there's a severe shortage of physics, chemistry, and math teachers in this country, and special ed teachers. And there are plenty of people interested in teaching. They're just walking away because they learn wrong things about the profession, inaccurate things about the profession from different places. And so that's the gist of the project. So to begin with, I was hoping that you could, oh, I forgot one thing. We also work with some undergrads here at mine. So Dawson Lang is in the physics department, and Emily, help me with her last name, Jared or Savannah.
It's really hard to say. Emma K. Let's just go with Emma K.
Emma K. And what is her major? Design, right? Engineering design?
I believe she's environmental engineering.
Yeah,
environmental engineering. Okay. I'm sorry, we also have an Emma who's a teaching major who's got make her own. Okay. All right. So we've also and we've worked with other undergrads previously as well. So if you haven't already done this, if you could just take a few minutes to do this pre-survey to see, just kind of give you a taste of what we're going to talk about. And also it helps us see where your knowledge is at about the teaching profession. And we always do this with our presentations, and we encourage other faculty to do this at other institutions who use our resources. So I'm going to give you just a few minutes, and please throw a done in the chat when you're finished. That way I don't give you too much time. And since so many people were able to start the pre-post earlier, maybe just have people throw in a need more time so I can see if there's a bunch of people still working on it. Okay, well, we're getting lots of done. So maybe we could start by having Jared and Savannah say just a tiny bit about your background.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll go ahead and go first while we're waiting. Like Wendy said, my name's Jared. My background is actually in chemistry. So I did my PhD in chemistry education research at Purdue University. And so my background isn't necessarily in physics, but in doing educational research. And I've been here with Wendy on this project for about a year, and it's been great. And it's been really good to be able to be here and try to make a difference in some of this work. So.
Yeah, and I'm Savannah. So Wendy mentioned I've been here for about 2 years. But before that, I did get my PhD in physics, and I was at the University of Oregon. So my PhD research was in biophysics, but I've since switched to education research.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to just share a little bit about the Get the Facts Out project, a few facts about the profession. We'll show you briefly the resources we've been developing. We spend a lot of time developing resources. And then we'll share some data from Mind's faculty and from Mind students about their perceptions of teaching as a profession. So the Get the Facts Out project is a project with the motivation of changing the conversation around STEM teacher recruitment. It's a $3 million NSF-funded project. We are in the middle of our third year, so we're about halfway through. It's a 5-year grant to change the perceptions of math, chemistry, and physics, high school and middle school teaching as a profession. We create user-tested, research-based teacher recruitment materials, and as I mentioned, it's continuously ongoing. We're always learning how to do a better job. And we also study the perceptions of the profession, and we have a longitudinal study at about 50 universities across the country, collecting perceptions data to see how departments' efforts to get the facts out change students and their fellow colleagues' perceptions about the profession. So this is the first of its kind partnership between 4 national societies. So the American Physical Society, the American Association of Physics Teachers, those 2 societies have actually partnered together on several projects. But it's also now, they're partnering with the American Chemical Society, and they've worked for a long time to come up with projects that they could really work together on. And so now this is the first time they've done that. And then the Association of Mathematics Teacher Educators is our newest partner. And that is a smaller association, but it is a very niche association that's perfect for this project because it's anybody in a Department of Mathematics or in a college of education that with an emphasis in mathematics teacher preparation. Pretty much anybody in that area belongs to this society. So those are the people who are working to recruit more math teachers. And so it's a good group to work with. And so that's who we're working with. And then here at Minds, we lead all of the research and the development of the resources. So the first thing I would like to do is ask you to think about a ladder. And I want you to think about on which step of the ladder you would say you personally feel you stand at this time. And if you're not on the ladder, that's your worst possible life. If you're all the way up at that 10th rung, it's your best possible life. This is not something I suggest you put into the chat. This is a very personal thing. So I just ask you to think to yourself and kind of commit to yourself where you think you are on that ladder at this time. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about that. Okay, and I know there's a lot that goes into that. You could probably think about this for a long time. But then I just want to keep moving on this. The next question would be, on which step do you think you will stand 5 years from now? So you feel like you're going to be about the same, or things are going to improve? Hopefully not the other direction. Now, this is called the Cantrell self-anchoring scale, and it's used all of the time. This particular data we're going to share with you was collected by Gallup Healthways, and it was often it's collected and then divided by demographics, and it might be divided by country that you live in. It might divided by state. If it's just within the US, it might be divided by some other demographic. In this case, it's divided by occupation. And so they surveyed 172,000 working US adults, and then they divided the data by occupation. And then they take the ladder and they divide the responses by top, middle, and bottom. The people who are at the top, and you have to be on the very top for year 5, or more towards the top, for at 5 years. And they weight now and 5 years so that now is weighted more heavily than in 5 years. And then the bottom is 4, 3, 2, 1, or the ground. They take the people who rate their lives at the top, subtract off the percentage of people who rate their lives at the bottom, and they completely ignore the people who rate their lives in the middle. And they get a percentage. And so where do you think teachers would rate their lives compared to other occupation groups? So if you want to just throw something in the chat, or you could speak up, whatever you want, but I'd like a quick prediction from you. Where do you think teachers rate their lives? Great. So we're seeing some people throw some things in there. So near the top, middle, fairly high, bottom. So we're all over the place. So I'll show you the data. Teachers actually rate their lives better than all occupation groups, trailing only physicians. And when they do these surveys of people with equivalent type degrees, so for example, everybody with a bachelor's degree, teachers are always at the top by quite a bit. They call this, they usually refer to this as well-being. So teachers' well-being regularly rates very high compared to other occupation groups. And so why do you think that? Why do you have any ideas why you think teachers might rate their lives so highly compared to other professionals? Again, you're welcome to speak up or throw it in the chat. Teaching is very fulfilling. It's a rewarding profession. Summer vacation, passion for their work and their students. So yes, all of these things tie in to it. So what we do in this project and the way we've framed our resources is to try to unpack this and try to understand this. So I'm having trouble here. So teacher well-being, we're seeing it has a lot to do with work-life balance, student and colleague relationships, and financial stability. And so some of these might surprise you based on the national rhetoric that you hear, but we're finding extensive data to support these things. So here are some quick clicker questions. We didn't put a poll together for you, so if you wouldn't mind throwing something in the chat just really quick, and I'm going to pass this over to Savannah. I'll shut up now.
No problem. Yeah, so just go ahead and throw your answer into the chat. And remember that this is for like your local area. So we're thinking about like Denver, Golden, Boulder, like right around here. And I'll give you a minute. Looks like C, D, lots of C's. Some B's. Okay, cool. So before we tell you the answer to that first one, we're going to ask you another question. Here, maybe I'll put some like lines in the chat. So this is a different question. So this one is for mid-career salaries. So go ahead and read this and then give your answer to this next question. And again, this is for like the local area right around here. Lots of C's. B, D. Cool. Cool. Okay, so now I will share the answers to those two questions. Thanks for participating. So like I said, these are basically like Denver or districts that we've chosen right around Denver. And what you can see is that like bachelor's degree straight out of college, you're looking at somewhere in the like 42,000 range, all the way up to almost 60,000, depending on like your number of credits and what you're teaching. Oh, thanks. So you can see that the answer to that second question is with a master's degree plus 15 years of experience. And you're anywhere from like 74,000 on the low end, all the way up to 106,000 on the high end. And the other thing we like to point out is that these are 9-month contracts. So that's going to look a little different from like a 12-month engineering contract, even if teachers do some work over the summer. Oh no, did I freeze?
You're frozen, but we can hear you.
Can you still hear me? Uh-oh.
We can hear you, Savannah. Can you hear us? There, you're back. And we could hear you the whole time.
Freeze? Oh, okay.
The whole time.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because you all froze. Sorry about that. Okay, so this slide. What we really wanted to point out here, this is typical salaries of bachelor degree recipients for the class of 2018. So what we wanted to point out was that teaching salaries are really comparable to physics starting salaries. So if you graduate with a bachelor's degree in physics, it's going to be pretty comparable as far as like what you're making to if you go into teaching. And again, we just want to note that all of these salaries are for 12-month positions except for teaching.
And this number that we show here is from a big national salary study that we did. So this doesn't reflect Denver area. This, the bar for teaching, we collected data from, I think we're up well over 200 districts now across the country. And we've also found data from the National Center for Educational Statistics that supports exactly the data we've mined that shows current starting salaries for teachers run on the 25th percentile end, right about 39,000 and change. and then they go up for starting salaries just over 60,000. So this is just kind of a range for the nation.
Cool. And now I'll turn it over to Jared to talk about loan forgiveness and retirement.
Okay, great. Yes. So in addition to, some financial stability in the actual salary that you would receive as a teacher, there's some other great benefits out there as well that we can advertise to people who are interested in teaching, so that they can understand the benefits of this career path. One of those, of course, is loan forgiveness. And those who are interested in becoming teachers really have several different opportunities to receive loan forgiveness and even grant money because of their interest in becoming teachers. And so here on this next slide, here we go. Yeah, I'm going to outline a couple of these different options that students can have and can take advantage of. First is what's called a direct or FFEL loan. And this is just like any other normal student loan would be. And in this case, a student can receive up to $17,500 of loan forgiveness for meeting a couple of criteria. And those criteria are: one, they have to teach for 5 consecutive years after they graduate, and this needs to be done in a low-income school. One thing that's really interesting to note is that there's many schools out there that do qualify as low-income schools. It's not what maybe people may stereotype as what a low-income school would be. There's many options out there for where you can teach and still have this loan forgiveness apply to you. The other one I wanted to mention to you is what's called a teach grant. And this isn't a loan at all. It really is a grant that you can receive, and you can get $4,000 per year of study if you're in a qualified teacher education program. And the idea here, or the stipulation on this, I guess you would say, is that in order for this to stay as a grant, the person who receives it has to teach for 4 consecutive years within 8 years of graduating from their program. And if they do that, then the money that they received is simply a grant. And if for some reason they don't finish that obligation, life takes them in a different direction, then that money turns from a grant into a normal student loan that they most likely would have taken out anyways. And so it's a great option for people who are interested in becoming a teacher. Yeah, so you can learn a whole lot about this if you go to studentaid.gov. It really outlines quite a bit about these different loan forgiveness programs and grants out there that are available. One other thing that's really important to consider is retirement. And teaching jobs tend to have better retirement benefits than other jobs you can get with the same degree. And in addition to this, something else that's really interesting to note is that teachers in the United States tend to retire earlier compared to other occupations. On average, it's been found that teachers retire at around age 59 compared to age 63 for other occupations. And I'll go ahead and show you a little bit about why that is the case. And so here in Colorado, teachers in the K through 12 system are qualified, or they get what's called Colorado Para Retirement Benefits, which in essence is a pension. And this is great for many reasons, but one of them is because with a pension, what you do is you get vested years of experience into your position. And when you reach a certain number of years in that position, then you receive a certain percentage of your highest earned income. And so an actual example here is if there was a student who graduated with their undergraduate degree at age 22 and started teaching, they would be eligible for full retirement benefits at age 57. And what that full retirement benefit would look like here in Colorado would be 87.5% of their highest annual income, or in other words, a pension. And so this is really interesting to compare to other retirement plans out there. For example, like a 401k. In those instances where you have to save money that you put into this retirement account, in those instances, in order to have a comparable retirement benefit to a teacher like I showed in this example, you would have to save on average $21,600 a year in order to have that same retirement benefit when you got to that point. And so teacher retirement benefits are really great, and it's a really good benefit of the profession, and it's important to be able to advertise that to people who are interested. And I'll turn it back over to Wendy.
I didn't mean to pull the slide away from you, sorry. So the Get the Facts Out project, our main motivation is there is a severe shortage of physics, chemistry, and math teachers in this nation, and we're trying to help solve that, help educators, teacher educators across the U.S. encourage more students to go ahead and follow their interest and become a teacher. And so this leads me to the next question I'd like you to throw your answer into the chat about, and that is, what do you think that student interest level is? What fraction of U.S. students do you think indicate some level of interest when asked, how interested are you in being a middle or high school teacher? So I'll give you a minute to throw some answers in here. I'm seeing B's and C's. All right, so I'm going to show you some data that was collected by the American Physical Society Panel on Public Affairs. And they surveyed physics, computer science, math, and chemistry majors across the US, and they took advantage of some other societies to help get this data. And they found about 40 to 50%. So I would argue 40 to 50% was a correct answer on that question, indicate in answer to this exact question, some level of interest in becoming a teacher, a little bit more for math and physics than for computer science and chemistry. And we've collected data at Minds, courtesy of both Christine Callan and Renee Falconer in chemistry, and a couple other people have helped us, but Christine surveyed intermediate mechanics, and Renee surveyed introductory chemistry, or Chem 1. And so we now have 780 student results from just this past fall. So that gives us a pretty good snapshot of the Mind student body. It's not, before we were emailing, and so you could argue maybe there was some selection effect going on, but now we've got data covering that intro chem, and then we've got then some upper division students by having intermediate mechanics. We've got some pretty good data for Minds. And so similar results have been found here. We've got 54% of students showing some interest in becoming a teacher. So 4% indicated they plan to pursue certification, and another 50%, there's a series of 7 questions on our instrument. Another 50% are indicating that they either want to become a teacher, plan to become a teacher a little bit later, or they would if it paid better, which it turns out when you ask them what it would need to pay, that is what it actually pays. Or if they had better retirement benefits, or if teachers were in general happier. Turns out teachers are actually quite happy compared to other occupation groups. So there's a large body of students at Minds who are interested in becoming teachers. There's another 25% who we would say are neutral. They aren't clearly indicating on those 7 items that they don't want to be teachers, but they also aren't clearly indicating that they have some interest. And then there's 20% who are clearly indicating they don't want to be teachers. For example, one of them put in their survey that I was looking at last night, I hate kids. So that was a good example of somebody who doesn't want to be a teacher, and there's no reason to try to encourage them to. So this is kind of our range of what we're seeing here on campus. And so this is why we're working so hard with Teach at Minds, because we want to give these people, these incredibly bright, talented people, the opportunity to get into the classroom and share their really deep knowledge of physics and chemistry and math. So our motivation is to start celebrating the positives of the profession. That's the way we center everything that we do. And there are a lot of positives about the profession. And so we want to make it okay to talk about those. It's definitely okay to talk about the challenges. Teaching has a lot of challenges as well. It's a challenging profession, but that's part of what, in a lot of ways, that's part of what makes it a satisfying profession. So again, teachers' well-being is higher than all other occupation groups, trailing only physicians. So how do we understand this better? So this is a chance to pause. I'm going to have you take the post-test. Once you finish the post-test, throw a done in the chat, and then we'll move into showing you some of our resources and also sharing some of the data that we collected just this fall. And it's the first time it's been shared out there. So I wanted to make sure there was something new and exciting and that no one else has ever seen that we can show you today. So throw a done in when you're finished, and then we'll keep going. I'm seeing lots of dones. Does anyone want to throw in a need more time? Okay. Hopefully that's adequate obligatory Zoom wait time, right? All right. So um, we spend a lot of our time developing resources. We started developing these resources at Minds because teaching wasn't, it is now in the catalog. And so we had to do all of our recruitment by word of mouth. So much of our time and effort with Teach at Minds is recruitment time. So we worked really hard to develop resources and figure out ways to reach students and to let them know that there are opportunities here to learn how to become an effective teacher. And so we have student presentations. It's similar, but a little bit different than the presentation you just saw. We have faculty staff presentations, ideas on how to reach students, data handouts, posters, brochures, flyer template, assessments. Savannah, is this supposed to be your part?
Yes, but it's totally fine. And feel free to jump in again if my internet goes out, because I've been getting all these like unstable internet notifications. But let's see. So yeah, like Wendy was saying, we have all of these resources. We have data, posters, brochures, flyers, assessments, and all of this is available totally free for you to download on our website. And the other nice thing to know is that you can go in and customize anything that you want to. So like if you want to put a picture of your students on there, that would be great. And we've found that that works really well. The other cool thing is we actually have some videos coming out pretty soon, and they're just going to be super short, like professionally made videos that would be great to show at the start of your classes.
And they're going to feature Minds students and Minds grads and Minds faculty.
Yeah.
Because we're taking advantage of where we're at. So that's, most people can't say that.
Yeah, so those should be really awesome. You should definitely watch for those to come out. So our student presentation is a clicker question and discussion based presentation. So it's actually like somewhat similar to what you just saw, but more aimed at students. Oh, thank you. So it's going to be focused on salaries, job satisfaction, and retirement, because that's what students are usually kind of concerned about when we talk to them. It can have a variable length, so anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, kind of depending on how much time you have and how much you want to go kind of into detail on our facts. And then the faculty presentations, that's actually what you just saw. So we have two flavors. We have a super short 15-minute version, which, as you may have noticed from the pre-post, doesn't actually cover everything that we like to talk about. But it at least kind of gives you a taste of everything. And then we do have a longer 50-minute presentation where we go into more detail on all of these facts. Uh-oh, did I freeze?
We can still hear you, but
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, good. Oh, the slide like doesn't change when I freeze. So I'm like, oh no, I'm stuck here. But anyway, so we have that. And then we also have this other flavor of faculty presentation, which is aimed at creating new Gfo champions. So we'll explain here in a little bit what a Gfo champion actually is. But those workshops can range anywhere from like a super short 30-minute one, all the way up to we've done like a 4-hour workshop, which sounds excessive, but it's actually really great for diving into the data. And here we'll just give you a quick list of ideas on how to reach students. And a lot of these are things that we've actually done at Minds, which is kind of cool, but we encourage you to do the same also. So there's admissions. You can create a video, for example, for that. You can attend the beginning of a class, which is like super easy now because you can do it from your couch on Zoom. We've done direct emails that have been very good for recruiting new students. We've gone to student life events, Office of Residence Life. The Career Center is another great place to go. Math and Science Associations. We have a lot of associations, the Alumni Association. And then we're totally open to if you have other ideas for like creative ways to get the facts out on the Minds campus. Cool. And then I think I'll turn it over to Jared to talk about some more resources.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, so in addition, we do have ways that can assist you in getting the facts out, as Savannah talked about and showed you some of the different presentations that we have that are available to you. We also have other resources, and what you see up on the screen right now are professionally made posters that have been user tested and they're research based as well. And these posters are posters you can hang out in your hallways and to help get the facts out about teaching as well. And so these are free to download from our website as well. You can go on there and pick out the ones that you would like and go ahead and download those as well. In addition to the posters, yeah, right down there at the bottom left, you'll see we also have brochures, we have flyers as well. And so there's a whole bunch of different resources you can use. Great. And so Savannah mentioned earlier about becoming a Gfo champion. And a Gfo champion is someone who simply uses our resources to be able to get the facts out about the teaching profession, someone who's being a champion for the teaching profession. And on our website, you can sign up to be a Gfo champion. And in addition to that, you can also sign up to request local teacher salary data. So we presented in this presentation for you local teacher salary data around the Denver area. And that data is freely available online, but it can take quite a bit of effort to be able to hunt it down and find the accurate data that you really need. And so we as a research team are willing to be able to do that hard work for you. And so if you have specific districts in mind that you're interested in, or that would be helpful for you in your recruitment efforts, you can request from us to be able to look that data up for you. Yeah, and this is sort of what I just explained here to you, just that we can go ahead and do that. In addition to that, if you do sign up to be a Gfo champion, we have lots of different supports that we can provide you with. One is this really neat aspect of our materials is that we can analyze pre-post data for you. You'll notice that you did pre-post quizzes in this presentation. And if you're a person who would go and give one of these presentations, as long as you register your presentation, we can then analyze pre-post data for you to show you exactly how effective you were and your presentation was at changing the perceptions of the teaching profession for your audience. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the time back over to Wendy.
Okay, so that's just a quick snapshot of some of the resources. We didn't want to spend too much time on that, but you can always look at the website or talk to us more about it if you're interested. And I wanted to take this chance to share some of the data we've collected at Minds from students and from faculty. So I'll start with some student data. This is a lot to look at, so I just want to give you a quick overview, and then I'll start to hone in on some things. But we have 783 students in this data set that had complete responses that we were able to use. And we've divided it in between the students who say yes to the question, I want to become a grade 7 through 12 teacher, and those who say no to the question, I want to become a grade 7 through 12 teacher. And I'm sorry, they don't say yes, they say agree or strongly agree, and then they disagree or strongly disagree to be in the yes or the no category, which means if you notice 603 plus 39 does not add up to 783. There are 141 people missing here because they're in the neutral category. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. But for now, I wanted to show you this because if you look, you'll see there's a dramatic difference between the responses from those who agree that they would like to become a grade 7 through 12 teacher from those who disagree. And so if we have these two groups aggregated, you can't know anything about your data set until you know what fraction are agreeing, what fraction aren't agreeing. Because if that whatever amount that fraction is off by is going to skew your entire data set. So you really can't see what kind of progress you're making unless you divide them out. So we always share this data divided out because of this drastic difference in responses. And then we'll look at, before I jump into what's on here, I thought you might be asking, well, who are these students? Who's in the data set that says I agree and who's in the data set that says I don't agree? So I have way more demographics here than you want to see. It might have been more helpful if I made them percentages, but I might have been adding up these numbers half an hour ago, so I didn't convert them to percentages yet. So you can see the far right-hand side is 600 people who said that they don't want to be a grade 7 through 12 teacher. So some of these people don't want to because they think it doesn't pay well. Some of them don't want to because they hate children. So this is a wide group of people. Don't take this to mean that the people who are in the no category actually wouldn't be interested. They just have decided. So you can see it's about the kind of distribution you see on the Minds campus. Close to 400 men, close to 200 women, 5 people who prefer not to say. And then for the demographics, you can see the demographics also very similar to the demographics of our campus. And then when we look at the folks who say that they're neutral, it's still pretty close. You know, if I had percentages on here, it's still in line. And then you look at those who want to teach, a little bit higher percentage of women now compared to men. And then the rest of the demographics, I think, you know, the numbers are starting to get to be really small, but it looks about the same. So that's kind of what we see there. Now, when we look at their major, in the past, the students who have participated in Teach at Mines have been very heavily from the physics department. But I think that's because 3 of us in the physics department have been working on this project the whole time. And so that's the department where people know about the program. But now we're starting to reach out more broadly. We've learned, especially now that everything's online, we've learned more ways to reach out more broadly. And we are seeing a much more representative sampling of majors. It's not perfect, but on the right, again, you can see a sampling. This is pretty much what the campus looks like. Now, we are a little more heavily skewed towards physics than I think the campus because of that intermediate mechanics body of students that are in this data set. So if I had just analyzed the folks in Chem 1, I think it would have been very representative of the campus, but this also includes intermediate mechanics. So you can see that there's a lot of majors represented here, even petroleum. We do have students from petroleum. We often get that, oh, petroleum is not going to be interested in teaching. There are people in all of these fields who are interested in teaching or pursuing all of these fields. But we have a lot of participation from physics, from chemistry, from mechanical, from computer science. Those are probably our most common students, and they're some of the biggest majors. So now if we go back to the data set and we hone in on this section about what students think of the teaching career. So these are categories that came out of a factor analysis. So we analyzed student responses, and we did a factor analysis to find out how the responses naturally grouped together. So this is empirically grouped categories. And then we gave it a name, and we worked very hard, many iterations with lots of expert advice on a name that fairly represented the statements. Often people think that we come up with the name and then we make up questions. That's not how it works. We make up questions that represent what people in the field think are important. We interview students. We make sure that they're interpreted consistently and as we intended them to be interpreted. And then we develop the survey, we collect data, and then when we get the data, we do a factor analysis to find out how these statements group together. And so that's where these categories came from. And then when we looked at the categories, we saw that there seemed to be a couple of different types of categories. And these 4 look like they're about teaching careers. And so these are the 4 I'm showing you here. And it's very clear that, again, those who want to become a grade 7 through 12 teacher are much more positive about the teaching career than those who do not. No surprise. But what is concerning is that even those who want to become a grade 7 through 12 teacher are less than 50% accurate about employee benefits and stability. So they've decided they want to be a teacher thinking that they're going to make $30,000 a year, thinking that they're never going to be able to retire, thinking that it's going to be stressful, they're not going to be happy, but they want to give back and make a difference. And then when they learn about the facts, they think they've won the lottery. They leave the room ecstatic because this career that they've chosen to pursue is actually also going to lead to a comfortable life, and they're actually going to be happier. Very good. The statistics say that there's a good chance that they're going to rate their lives better than their fellow classmates. So that's an interesting little piece of data, and that also motivates us to do this, to get these facts out. Another category that's on here that's interesting is students' perceptions of support for teaching. So do they perceive that others support them becoming a teacher? And we specifically are interested in whether they perceive their department supports them teaching, and if they perceive that their department values and encourages teaching. And so when thinking about where you're at and what institution you're with, it's super interesting to look at these categories of, do the students think their department will support them teaching? And so of these students who want to become teachers, 60-some% think that their department does. but a little over half of them think their department actually values and encourages teaching. And so I think we're learning that if faculty know more about the facts about the profession, then students see that the faculty realize that this would actually be a really great career option for their students and for their best and brightest students to go out there and share their knowledge of math and science, and to share their passion and interest in math and science, and to give the students a fair chance, their students a fair chance of being able to pursue STEM at an institution like mine, because you need really good high school preparation to be able to even think about doing that. And so many students in this country are not getting that, and they don't even have that opportunity. So we need to get stronger teachers out there to give everyone that opportunity if they're interested. So here's another way to look at the data. I told you we'd talk about those neutrals later. So it's been bothering me for a long time that we ignore the neutrals. And so I took some time in the last couple days to try to see what those neutrals look like, and to see, where should they be? What do they mean? What can we learn from them? So this is going to be a radar plot. So this is going to be a little bit different graph than what we've seen so far. And I just wanted to see if the neutrals looked more like the people who say no, I don't agree with, I want to be a teacher, or if they look more like those people who say yes. So I'll let you make a prediction in your own mind of whether you think they're going to look more like the no's or more like the yeses. And so here's the radar plot. And what we do is we put the categories around the edge. And so you can see my department supports me teaching, values and encourages teaching, personal enjoyment. That was one that was drastically different for those who want to be a teacher and those who want to be a grade 7 through 12 teacher and those who do not. Keep in mind, on those who say they do not want to be a grade 7 through 12 teacher, a certain fraction want to be elementary teachers. So it doesn't mean they're against teaching. They just don't want to teach middle school and high school. So here's what it looks like. And it looks to me like the neutrals are much more like those who want to teach than those who don't want to teach. My department supports me is the same. Others support me is the same. As a career choice, it's closer to those who want to teach than those who don't. Personal enjoyment, it's closer to the no's, but I'm going to show you something interesting here in a minute. And then employee benefits and stability, we can do better here for all categories. So we're going to work on that. So these people are the interesting ones, and it makes sense because we saw a lot of students at mine showed an interest in teaching, and so they're just falling into that neutral. So this is what I was saying I think is super interesting. Personal enjoyment is very high. The students who want to say, yes, I want to be a teacher, think it's going to be personally enjoyable. That's good. And those who don't want to don't think it will be. Makes sense. Those who are neutral, where the difference is on whether they disagree. If they disagree with it being personally enjoyable, it's very small. So they're actually just really neutral. They're really neutral on whether it's going to be personally enjoyable, and they're really neutral on whether they want to be a teacher. And I looked at this, and a lot of these say that they would if something was different about the profession. So I thought that was interesting to look at. And when we look at our pictogram of prospective teachers, it matches up with the fact that a little over half of the students, when we look at our 7 statements, have indicated a level of interest. So then we have lots of places for students to leave comments, and some of them just say, do you have any other comments for us? And so here's an example. I definitely do believe there's a stereotype around teaching that has to do with a low paying salary and not a favorable career environment. I think what you're doing is very helpful, and if people truly did know more about it, more people who have an affinity for teaching would pursue it as a career. The benefits are beyond amazing, and I can't believe more people don't know about them. So this is somebody who is knowledgeable about it. They've decided that they don't want to be a teacher, but it's nice to see those. There was a lot of comments along those lines, even from the people who say they don't want to pursue teaching. Both my grandparents on my mother's side were teachers and encouraged me to pursue a different career path. Nonetheless, they were happy that they chose to be teachers. We see this a lot. People who are in the teaching profession think that it's more glamorous to be an engineer. But when you look at the statistics, less than half of students who get an engineering bachelor's take a job in engineering. And there's a lot of people who go into engineering and don't even complete their bachelor's. So we want to encourage them to go into a profession that people are actually saying they're very happy. Here's someone who said they were neutral. If I was going to become a teacher, teaching grades 1 through 6 is more likely for me than 7 through 12. So I mentioned before, we've got people here who want to be elementary teachers. I've had 2 people this last fall, well, they were actually in December, were talking to me, and I had to kind of work at it to get them to tell me that they actually wanted to pursue elementary. And then when I encouraged them and I didn't act like they were crazy, it was like they came out of the closet. They were so excited that somebody thought it was a good idea for them to teach elementary. But of course it's a good idea. Can you imagine if elementary kids actually had somebody who had strong math and science background, was there in their classroom to help them learn about math and science? So I'm very excited we've got students who are going to pursue that as well. And then here's someone who wants to be a teacher. I wish teaching was talked about more at Mines. I hear a lot of my friends who are interested in pursuing teaching, but we feel like we don't have a ton of resources. And I think there's a lot of people who feel this way. So it's good to hear from the students and to hear that, because sometimes faculty think there isn't interest because, like the students interested in elementary, they're afraid to say it because they're afraid they're going to be judged, that that's not a good idea with their skill set. Often people don't think that's a good use of it. I think it's a fantastic use of their skill set. I want to be careful of time here, but this is something else I thought I would just show you quickly. How do the Mines students look compared to our national data set? Pretty close. I looked at the students who said, I want to be a teacher. And it looks like my department values and encourages teaching is a little lower than the national data set. But to be fair, we have a lot of engineers in our data set, and our national data set doesn't have a lot of engineers. There's some engineering in there, but not nearly the fraction as the Mines data set. And so there's different kinds of departments. And also, we think our national data set is skewed towards people in teacher preparation programs because those are the departments that want to work with us. And so I don't think this is alarming at all. I just thought you might be interested in seeing how it looks. And then just really quickly, I can show you some faculty data. This is actually from 2019. We haven't analyzed 2020 faculty data yet. This is predominantly math, physics, and chemistry department. So we don't have any engineering faculty. Well, there's one other in here. So this is a little bit different than the student demographics in that sense. Good range of male and female faculty and good range of different faculty roles. And so, again, lots of categories that came out of a factor analysis, and then we take a look at it here. And so I'm going to focus on faculty perceptions of teachers and their careers. So this is just what faculty think of teachers and their careers, totally independent of students. And it's concerning that about 30% of faculty think teaching is a good career. But teachers are rating their lives higher than all occupation groups, including other professionals, which is where faculty fall in and where engineers fall. So students can see that. Now, faculty, it looks good. About 60-some% of faculty advise and support students to go into teaching. We really need to see that number higher, but it's pretty strong. But even this one down here that looks great, this is questions about, would I be comfortable if my strongest student went to graduate school? That's pretty much 100%. Would I be comfortable if my strongest student went into industry? Drops down immediately to 80-some%. And would I be comfortable if my strongest student went into teaching? About the same as the answer for industry. So 1 in 7 faculty who filled this out can't agree with the statement, I would be comfortable if my strongest student did something other than go to graduate school. And so I think we need to be a little bit more open-minded. I think there's a lot of careers that students can be happy with and be satisfied and lead a good life. And students really look up to us. And so I think it's important for us to support them and actually be happy if our strongest student, comfortable is all it said, comfortable. You don't have to be ecstatic. You just have to be comfortable that your strongest student decided to become a teacher. And so students, even though faculty are strong about advising, students can smell that faculty don't necessarily think teaching is a good career. So we're trying to help you see some data to see that teaching is actually a fantastic career. So yeah, with that, I will stop. And let's start celebrating the positives of the profession.
Thank you, Wendy. That was fun presentation. I really enjoyed it. So we'll open it up to questions now. So feel free to either unmute yourselves or write a question in the chat, and we have a few minutes for questions here.
I see Dawson.
I have a question. I noticed you put the like annuitized value of the pension plans, at least for the Colorado teachers. I was just wondering how you get that point across to undergrads, because I imagine, you know, when I was an undergrad, I wasn't thinking about retirement, and I may not really understand what that means to have to save another $21,000 a year for retirement, but I think that is a huge benefit that people are overlooking. So I was just wondering how you guys are stressing that.
Well, when the student presentation, we use the same slide, but we spend more time talking a little bit about the difference between a 401k and a pension, because we find that students are actually most interested in that topic during the presentation, and they have a lot of questions. Most of the questions are usually centered around how retirement works and what the retirement benefits mean, and they're very excited about that. And it's interesting because national data shows that students, people of that age group are thinking about retirement more than people in other age groups until you get to those who are about to retire. So it's one of our biggest faculty misperceptions to think that students aren't thinking about retirement. But it's somehow, for some reason, that's what we're seeing in the last several years, is that students are about to embark. I think it's because they're about to embark on their working career, which is different than what they've been doing. So they're thinking about when they're going to be done with that new thing that's kind of scary and that's looking in front of them. But then once you ask people when they're in the 30 to 40-year-old category, when do you anticipate you're going to retire? They say something like 70. But when you ask people who are 20 years old and they think they're going to retire, they say 40. So it's very interesting to students, and we just described to them a difference between a 401k, where you're investing that money and you're dependent on the stock market and the rate of return in the stock market, and the employer match is usually a few percent compared to, in which is not even going to begin to give you that 21,000 a year that you need. So we just explain it to them similar to what Jared did, but we add a little bit more in about a pension versus a 401k, where the 401k depends on your investment strategies and the pension is just guaranteed by the state, and it doesn't matter how long you live.
Wendy, I just, there's a few questions in the chat as well. I don't know if you want to take a look at those, and maybe we can try to tackle some of those as well.
Okay. So Emma and Dawson, they showed up their screen for a second. We introduced you guys when you weren't here, but they're the undergrads that are working with our project. So if you want to wave and say hi, that would be great. And they were in a meeting with Allie, so that's why they couldn't be here. And then how does the salary satisfaction compare across states? So salary varies widely across states. Salary also varies widely by urban area versus rural area. And so in our salary study, we were looking at that, and we were looking at correlations, and we also looked at housing prices and rent prices, in also average salary of all employees in different areas. And what we found is that salaries for teachers are lower in rural areas, but the cost of housing was a much larger fraction lower. So your ratio of your salary as a teacher versus what it would cost you to live or to rent or buy, we didn't use cost of living, rent or buy, was a much better ratio in the rural areas than it was in urban areas. And there is a wide range in states, California, New Jersey, New York, Illinois, they all pay quite a bit higher than Oklahoma, North Carolina. Those are some of the lowest paying. Oklahoma, interestingly though, has stronger benefits, much stronger health insurance benefits, stronger retirement. And there's 15 states who have retirement plans like Colorado and don't offer Social Security with the pension, but the rest of the states offer the pension plus Social Security. So generally their pension is not the 87.5%, it's something less. Satisfaction, I don't think we have good data to tell you if there's big variations in satisfaction by state. So I can't answer that question. And I see if I can, there's a giant amount of questions in the chat, so I'm trying to make sure I can scroll. Is there any data on career outlooks for PhD students interested in high school teaching? There's a decent fraction. So in our program, about 10% of our students are graduate students, and we have PhD students every year who decide that they either after completing their PhD or exit their PhD program and go become a high school or middle school teacher. So there's actually a decent fraction of physics and chemistry and math teachers in this country that do have PhDs and find it to be a very satisfying career and a really good competitive option for them. And it's just the schools reward it because the salary schedules are different. If you have a PhD, almost every district will pay you more because you have a PhD. Your starting salary will be higher than the starting salaries we showed. And Westminster is the most extreme example in Colorado of rewarding a PhD. You start at $84,000 at Westminster if you have a PhD in year one of teaching. Now, that's not what it's going to be for the other districts, but that's what they do. And Boulder also rewards PhDs quite highly, but they're also competitive districts to get a job in. What is involved in the factor analysis, and how do you identify the related categories in the survey responses? So factor analysis takes several weeks of data mining, data crunching. We usually use SPSS, but you can use R. There's other data programs you can use, statistical analysis packages you can use. And so the factor analysis, we do direct Abelman rotation, which means that our factors don't have to be orthogonal. They could be related. And we rotate those around to find the best fit for the groupings of statements. And once you can normally you do a factor analysis on the entire data set, but we do our factor analysis on the entire data set to begin with. That shows us usually our strongest categories. And then to make sure a category is very strong, we do the factor analysis on just the statements that group together to see if when you run them on their own, if they stay one category or if they separate out into a couple of different categories. And so it's a very iterative, long process because you have to keep doing that with different groups of statements to make sure they're going to hold together even on their own. And if not, sometimes you find some really interesting divisions that are important to tell you something about how people are thinking. And so that's what's involved with the factor analysis. And then once we have those statements and those groupings that hold together, then we look at them and we try to come up with some names that make sense with the statements. Then we take them to our faculty advising group, which is a group of faculty who do teacher preparation and also high school teachers who work with universities in teacher preparation. And we ask them to look and see if we have come up with names that represent the statements and don't infer something else. So that takes a couple of months. That's actually harder than the factor analysis. Identifying which related categories, we just did that within our own group, and we looked at the categories and the statements, and it was pretty clear cut that some were about the teaching profession versus about students and advising students. So those were more clear cut and easier to do, and those didn't have a statistical background behind them. It was just made sense to us. And so we represent it as that. It's just what we thought looked like groups of statements. So.
Well, I think we need to let a lot of the graduate students go. So I'm going to pause our recording for now. Graduate students who need to leave, please do so. And Wendy, if you are able to stick around, or Savannah or Jared, for any remaining questions, please feel free to, but you are also welcome to go if you cannot do so. Thank you both. And thank you all for speaking today.
Well, and thank you everyone for coming and listening. It's always nice to be able to share about our project and get feedback.